At negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 29 below Celsius, exposed skin frostbites in 30 minutes in still air. With a 10-mile-an-hour wind, you have 10 minutes, not 10 hours, 10 minutes. And in January of 2019, when the polar vortex dropped temperatures below negative 20 in Chicago, Minneapolis, and Detroit, the shelters were full. People were turned away at the door. The official answer was go to a shelter. The real question is what you do when the shelter is full and it is negative 30 wind chill outside. There is a way through this, and I'm going to give it to you straight. I am saving the last method for the end because it costs absolutely nothing, and it will still keep you alive when a $400 sleeping bag might not. Stay with me. If you have ever laid awake shivering in a parked car, do yourself a favor and subscribe. Everything here is about staying warm, hidden, and alive for a few dollars. I spent more winters than I will admit sleeping in vehicles, under tarps, in places the city does not officially know people sleep. I got back on my feet, and the reason I know how to talk about this is because the people still out there taught me, and some of those lessons came from very cold nights and very close calls. I am not here to make you feel something. I'm here to tell you what works. So let's start with the answer everybody reaches for. Go to a shelter, and look, when it works, it is the right call. But at negative 20, the nights that actually kill people, that answer breaks down in 4 real ways. First, capacity. Minneapolis, which sees negative 20 regularly, operates a code blue emergency protocol that activates at negative 10 Fahrenheit, negative 23 Celsius. When it triggers, outreach workers bring blankets and hand warmers to people who could not get through the door. The city built a government protocol around the fact that the shelters fill up on the coldest nights. That is not anecdote. That is documented city policy. Second, rules. Many shelters require sobriety, check-in before 8 at night, separation of couples, and no pets. For a lot of people living in vehicles, a dog is the reason they have not completely lost the thread. You do not leave the dog, so you do not go in. Third, safety. Congregate shelters have documented theft, documented assault, documented disease spread. For people who have already been through enough, walking into a room with 50 strangers and no control over your belongings is not an abstract fear. It is a real calculation based on real experience. Fourth, location. Rural and suburban homeless populations can be 15 or 20 miles from the nearest shelter. An answer that requires transportation to reach is not an answer at negative 20 in the dark. Now, here is the honest version. If you can get to a shelter safely and they have room, go. That is the best outcome. I am not arguing against shelters. I'm talking about what you do when the shelter is not available. And on the coldest nights, for a documented number of people, it is not. The expensive fix that gets sold to this problem is a high-end sleeping bag. The North Face Inferno, rated to negative 40, runs $599 at REI. The Marmot Cole Memdry, rated to negative 20, is $450. These are real prices as of June 2026. If you have that money, buy the bag. Downfill compresses smaller, weighs less, lasts longer with proper care. That is the honest concession. This video is for people who do not have that money and need to know that the same temperature physics are reachable for $20, a garbage bag, and an afternoon. Before any method, you have to understand why you lose heat and where it goes. Because once you understand the mechanism, you can interrupt it with whatever is at hand. Your body generates heat, roughly 80 watts at rest. At negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, 29 below Celsius, the world around you is trying to pull that heat away through 3 pathways. Conduction is direct contact. Frozen ground sits at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius, or below. Your body pressed against it loses heat the way a hot iron on a countertop does. Cold concrete drinks your body heat like a sponge. Convection is moving air. Wind strips the thin warm layer your body builds at your skin surface and replaces it continuously with cold air. Radiation is the infrared your body emits outward into cold space, the way a stove radiates heat across a room even without touching anything. Every method that works at -20 addresses at least one of those three pathways, and they all work through the same mechanism. Still air. Air has one of the lowest thermal conductivities of any common material. As long as it is not moving, it does not conduct heat efficiently. You are not fighting 20 below. You are fighting heat transfer. Stop the transfer and the temperature stops mattering as much. Think of a thermos. The vacuum between the walls eliminates all three mechanisms at once. No contact, no convection, no radiation pathway. What you are doing in extreme cold is building a thermos around your body out of whatever you can find. That is the whole system. Every piece of this video is a different way to trap stale air between you and the cold. Now, here is where most people get themselves in real trouble before they ever lie down. The base layer. Most people wear what they have, and what most people have is cotton. A cotton t-shirt, denim jeans, a cotton hoodie. Cotton absorbs 27 times its weight in moisture and loses roughly 90% of its insulating value when wet. At -20, your body sweats when you walk. That moisture saturates the cotton, and the cotton becomes a refrigerant pressed against your skin. Denim jeans are the most commonly worn item on hypothermia victims. That is not something I made up. That is the documented mechanism behind a significant percentage of cold weather deaths. The fix costs almost nothing. Polyester thermal underwear at Walmart runs $8 to $12 for the set. Army surplus wool undershirts run $6 to $15. Polypropylene long underwear, same range. Wool is worth a separate sentence. It insulates even when wet, holding roughly 60 to 70% of its dry insulating value. It does not have to be fine wool. A rough Army surplus undershirt does the job. Never cotton against your skin in extreme cold. Over the base, a mid-layer with loft. Fleece, a surplus wool blanket folded over your torso, any synthetic with air pockets. The mechanism is dead air trapped between fibers. A $5 surplus wool blanket folded twice gets you meaningful insulation. Over that, a wind and water barrier. A 55-gallon contractor garbage bag, 3 mil, worn as a poncho, stops wind entirely and is waterproof. You cut a hole for your head at the bottom, slits for your arms. Cost from a 10-count box at Home Depot, about 60 cents a bag. Tarp overhead adds rain and snow shedding. The full 3-layer system from Walmart plus Dollar Tree plus Army surplus runs $15 to $25. In calm conditions at -20 with dry layers, it extends safe exposure from minutes to hours. The caveat I will not skip. This system fails the moment the base layer gets wet. If you are walking hard and sweating and you stop, you have to deal with the moisture before you sit still in the cold. That is the hardest part of cold weather survival for someone who is moving. You have to stop and manage the wet before the wet manages you. Now, let me stop for a moment and tell you what all of this has in common. Still air. Wool fibers trapping air pockets. Corrugated cardboard trapping air between its layers. The loft in a sleeping bag. The space between your clothing layers. Your grandmother knew this. She called it a quilt, and she layered 2 of them in winter. Each layer added air, and each pocket of air kept the cold from reaching you. This knowledge is older than gear stores. It was practical before it had a name. The ground is the kill vector that does not get talked about enough. Cold concrete or frozen dirt at -20 pulls heat out of your body through direct conduction faster than the air does. People die with adequate upper insulation because they lay on bare ground. I have felt this myself. You wake up with the cold, not just around you but inside you, coming up from beneath, and you know the ground got to you before the air did. The solution is free. Grocery stores, Costco, any big box loading dock will have cardboard. 4 to 6 layers of corrugated cardboard between your body and the ground meaningfully cuts that conductive loss. Multiple layers matter more than single layers because each layer adds an air gap. It is what people figured out on the streets of Minneapolis and Chicago long before anyone sold them a foam pad. A closed-cell foam pad from Walmart runs $10 to $15 and is better than cardboard. If you have $10 to spend on one thing for extreme cold ground sleeping, it is that pad. Reflectix from Home Depot, $16 to $22 a roll, adds a radiant barrier underneath. The manufacturer numbers are optimistic for real-world use, but even the conservative performance is meaningful when the alternative is bare concrete. If you have Mylar emergency blankets, a 4-pack runs $7 to $8 at Walmart. Understand exactly what they do. They reflect 80 to 90% of radiant body heat. That is real. But they do not stop conductive loss from ground contact. They do not stop convective loss if air moves inside them. A person on frozen ground under a Mylar blanket with nothing underneath will still go hypothermic, just slower. The correct use is as an outer shell over your insulating layers. Wrap the Mylar outside your blanket or bag. It seals in dead air and reflects your radiant loss back at you. Emergency medical technicians use it exactly this way, over insulation layers on a field hypothermia patient. That is the verified application. Over layers, never instead of them. Hot Hands warmers from Walmart, 78 cents each or $7 for 10, work through iron oxidation, a controlled rust reaction that releases heat. Surface temperature runs 130 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit over 10 to 12 hours. At -20, do not hold them in your hands. Place them at your body's major heat exchange points, inner thighs near the femoral arteries, armpits, neck. These are where blood flows closest to your skin surface. Warm the blood returning to your core, and you warm the whole system. Do not place them directly against skin for extended periods. They will burn you. Wrap them in a sock. A hot water bottle is the most underrated tool in cold weather survival and the least talked about. A 32-ounce container of boiling water wrapped in a shirt or a sock placed near your core inside a sleeping system provides 3 to 4 hours of meaningful warmth. Not to your feet are extremities. Core temperature is the priority. Inner thigh, abdomen, chest. Access to boiling water, 7-Eleven, McDonald's, a public library, a truck stop, a warming center. People living outside know where the hot water is. They learn it fast and they use it. For the portion of this audience living in vehicles, and HUD data shows vehicle dwelling is a significant and growing portion of unsheltered homelessness. A car or van at -20 is not automatically safe. Glass is a near-zero insulator. Metal conducts cold directly. An uninsulated vehicle equalizes with outside air temperature within 30 to 60 minutes of the engine stopping. Reflectix cut to fit each window adds meaningful insulation. Full vehicle window coverage can raise interior equilibrium temperature noticeably above ambient in still conditions. The physics supports a real improvement. Cost for the full vehicle, 1 to 2 rolls at $16 to $22 each, plus foam board sheets from Dollar Tree at $1.25 each for backing. $20 to $45 total for a vehicle that holds heat instead of bleeding it. I have cut Reflectix to a windshield with a pocket knife in a parking lot at first light, before the cold had fully set in, the foil edge not quite clean, pressing it into the corners. It is not elegant work, but it is the difference between waking up and not waking up on a hard night. Public infrastructure is underused because people do not know where to look. 24-hour laundromats stay at 68 to 75 degrees regardless of outside temperature, heated by the dryers running constantly. Documented use by homeless populations in northern cities and largely tolerated on cold nights in most locations. Large hospital emergency room waiting areas are a documented last resort warming location. A hospital is legally required to provide emergency care and has never successfully turned away someone in hypothermic distress. Heated bus shelters exist in Minneapolis and Chicago with city-installed infrared heaters, casinos, airport terminals, 24-hour big box stores. Tolerance varies by location and by night. You learn which locations work and you remember them. That map in your head is worth money. Safe parking programs are real and operational. Safe Parking LA runs through multiple nonprofits with city support. Safe Parking San Diego operates with county backing. Safe Parking Santa Barbara was one of the first programs in the country, established in 2004, and has been a model for programs nationwide. If you are in a vehicle, searching your city's name plus safe parking program is worth 30 seconds. Here is what the gear industry does not want in the same sentence as their prices. The U.S. military modular sleep system is rated to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 below in both scales. It was designed for soldiers surviving in actual Arctic combat conditions, not weekend camping, not glamping, actual missions in actual extreme cold. It is available at any Army surplus store in the country for $50 to $150 depending on condition. The North Face Inferno with the same temperature rating is $599 at REI. Same physics, same dead air insulation principle. The manufacturing cost of a high-end down sleeping bag is estimated by industry analysts at $60 to $90. The markup to $599 is not performance, it is marketing. The recreational buyer equates price with safety. Someone buying a bag for a weekend trip in the Rockies is a very different customer than someone whose life depends on it. The gear industry has always marketed to the recreational buyer. If the military surplus option is just as capable, REI's margin depends on you not knowing that. The knowledge gap is the product, and the cities are not filling that gap. In June 2024, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in Grants Pass v. Johnson that a city can legally enforce public camping bans even when shelter capacity is insufficient to house all homeless people. The ruling is cited as 603 U.S. 519. Within months, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and Portland accelerated encampment clearance operations. The HUD 2023 point-in-time count recorded 653,000 people experiencing homelessness on a single night, the highest recorded count since the count began, a 12% increase from the year before. 261,000 of them were unsheltered. In states where -20 is a routine temperature, unsheltered means outside. The legal structure now gives cities the authority to move people from block to block. The solution being funded is enforcement. The solution that would keep people alive is this information, distributed to the people who need it. Instead, it costs you the price of a North Face bag to learn what the surplus store had for $50 all along. That is not a conspiracy. It is a budget and a court ruling. Now I have to slow down, because this section matters more than any price I have given you. Your body temperature dropping is not gradual and obvious. At 95 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 Celsius, you are in mild hypothermia, shivering, clouded thinking, judgment going. At 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 Celsius, shivering stops. And when shivering stops and you are not warm, that is not your body recovering. That is your body shifting to organ preservation mode. That is a medical emergency. If someone stops shivering and they are still cold, get them help immediately. At 86 degrees Fahrenheit, loss of consciousness becomes a real risk. At 82 degrees, cardiac arrhythmia. Death typically occurs between 78 and 82 degrees. These are documented thresholds from wilderness and survival medicine literature. Exposed skin at -20 in still air frostbites in 30 minutes. With a 10-mile-an-hour wind, 10 minutes. Early signs: numbness, white or grayish-yellow skin, a waxy texture. Do not rub frostbitten tissue. Do not rewarm it if there's any chance of it refreezing. Warm water at 98 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit immersion is the correct field treatment. If you are heating a vehicle with any combustion source, engine idling, or propane heater, you need a battery-operated carbon monoxide detector in the cab. The Kidda brand at Walmart runs $20 to $25. This is not optional. Carbon monoxide has no smell, no color, no taste. During the 2019 polar vortex, people died in running vehicles because drifting snow blocked the exhaust pipe. The cab fills from underneath while you sleep. The detector is the only warning you will get. Check the exhaust pipe is clear before you idle. Crack a window minimum 1 inch. Have the detector visible and working. The Mr. Heater Little Buddy propane heater is $80 to $90 at Walmart, puts out 3,800 BTU per hour, and has an oxygen depletion sensor that shuts it off when air quality drops. In a larger van with a window cracked at least 1 inch, it is the viable heating tool for vehicle dwellers in extreme cold. A 1-pound propane cylinder at $5 to $6 runs about 5.5 hours. Window cracked. Detector in the cab. Both visible, both active. That is the protocol, not one without the other. I am not going to be the man who gets you hurt to win a click. Now, let me tell you what does not work, because bad information at -20 is a different kind of dangerous: alcohol. The oldest lie in cold weather mythology is that a drink warms you up. What alcohol does is cause vasodilation. Blood vessels near the skin dilate, more warm blood comes to the surface, you feel warmer. The actual effect is that your body is dumping core heat to the environment faster than before. The sensation of warmth is your body losing heat to the air. The masking of shivering is the second danger. Your early warning system is chemically silenced right when you need it most. Studies in wilderness medicine consistently document alcohol as a significant factor in hypothermia deaths. Not folklore. Pharmacology. Cotton is insulation. I said it in the layering section and I will say it again because it keeps killing people. The cold-wet scenario. You walk, you sweat, the cotton absorbs moisture, you stop, the wet cotton presses against your skin and conducts your heat away. This is the mechanism. Polyester or wool at the base, always. A mylar blanket alone on frozen ground. The social media content implies it handles everything. At -20 with wind, it does not. It addresses radiant loss. It does not stop conductive loss from ground contact. It is a component of a system. Alone, at those temperatures, it is not sufficient. I know what some of you are thinking. People die in extreme cold even with gear and knowledge. You are right. At -20, any of these methods can fail. If the base layer gets wet, if the ventilation ice seals the vent, if the CO detector battery is dead. These methods reduce risk and extend survival time. They are not guarantees. They are what trained military personnel, harm reduction outreach workers, and experienced vehicle dwellers actually use. The National Healthcare for the Homeless Council publishes clinical guidance to outreach workers that aligns with the layering, ground insulation, and warming center methods in this video. The goal is not to make the night comfortable. The goal is to still be alive when the sun comes up. These methods improve those odds. Ignorance kills faster than -20 does. I also know some of you are thinking, a snow shelter sounds extreme. Who actually does that in a city? Stay with me. I said at the top that I was saving the best for last. Here it is. Fresh snow is approximately 95% air by volume. Air, as you now know, is a terrible conductor of heat. A properly built snow mound shelter with walls 10 to 12 inches thick can hold an interior temperature above 0 degrees Fahrenheit, that is 18 below Celsius, when the outside temperature is -30 Fahrenheit, -34 Celsius. That is a 30 to 40 degree improvement over ambient, the difference between probable hypothermia and survivable conditions. This is a quinzhai. You do not need a hillside or a mountain. You pile snow into a mound 8 to 10 feet in diameter and 5 to 6 feet high. You let it sit for 2 hours minimum. As snow settles, it sinters. The crystals bond together and the structure becomes self-supporting. Before you hollow it out, push 8 to 10 sticks, each about 10 inches long, into the mound surface all the way around. These are your wall thickness gauges. Then you hollow from one end, pulling snow out until you hit the sticks. When you reach a stick, you have 10 inches of wall. Leave it that thick. Poke a ventilation hole through the ceiling with your thumb or a stick no bigger than your fist to let carbon dioxide out and fresh air in. Block the entrance with your pack or a snow block. Line the floor with cardboard or a sleeping pad because ground insulation still applies inside a snow shelter. Within 30 to 60 minutes of occupancy, body heat alone brings the interior temperature above 0 even when it is -20 or -30 outside. The U.S. Army Arctic Survival Doctrine teaches this. The Canadian Forces use it in winter training. It costs nothing except time. About 2 to 3 hours alone, 90 minutes with 2 people, and the snow that fell from the sky. Check the ventilation hole regularly. Condensation ice or drifting snow can close it. Mark the outside with a visible pole so plow operators and others know someone is inside. The gear industry cannot sell you snow. The city cannot sweep you off snow that fell on public ground. It requires no ID, no check-in time, no sobriety requirement, no pet policy. It is physics. It is what people learned the hard way, in the cold, with nothing to fall back on, long before there was a product to sell them instead. So here's what I would do tonight, if it was -20 and I was out there. Wool or synthetic base layer, nothing cotton against my skin. A mid layer with loft over that, a windshell over that, a garbage bag if that is what I had. 6 layers of cardboard between me and the ground, and my foam pad on top of that. Hot water bottle near my core if I had access to boiling water, warmers at my inner thighs. Mylar on the outside of all of it, not instead of it. If I was in a vehicle, Reflectix on every window, the Mr. Heater going with the window cracked 1 inch, the CO detector clipped where I could see it. And if there was enough snow and I had the energy, I would build the Quincy. Because it is the one thing in this system that holds through the worst conditions without a single product. What is the cheapest thing that ever got you through a bad night? If you have slept rough in cold weather, what did you use? What did you figure out? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. Stay warm, stay sharp, and remember, the people the world walks past know things the rest of us forgot.